tripod. Out. Dick jokes. I've been watching Schedule 1, and it's basically just it's just one. I've been watching my episode 11, and it's basically just one long dick joke. It's one long series of dick jokes. And you know what I am? Totally fine with it. There's a reason I'm single. There was a reason I was single before Rach found me. I've been making that joke so long I forgot to mend it. There's a reason I spent so long single. Anyway, we're going to read The Coming Race. I'm going to try to finish it tonight. That may or may not happen. Hey, Tony, what's up? Yeah, I'm fine. It's cold, but I have everything I need. And I'm going to get in my sleeping bag here in a minute. I've actually been kind of sloughing off layers lately, trying to make sure I'm not carrying around too many pounds, literally pounds. No, I can't do push-ups. Not without extreme pain and not here in the tent. I heard that. If I were in a position to do push-ups, I would be outside of my sleeping bags, and that would be life-threatening if I were cold enough that I needed to do anaerobic activity to get my body temperature warmed up. It's better to just have food in a sleeping bag than to need to do anaerobic activity. My tent's not wide or long enough for me to do push-ups in. You know I'm touching both walls, and that you can see both of my hands touching both walls, right? I wouldn't want it. Why the fuck would I want to set up a tent on the spot that why would I want to tear this tent down when I've already survived a winter in comfort in it, in this spot, in this tent, after all the work I did to flatten this hill for this perimeter, this space. If I got a new tent that was any bigger, I would have to flatten the hill to that size. Now, months after making this spot comfortable for this size. I wouldn't want your tent. You have my tent. And then why would I want more space when you can see that I've got a blanket right here that's keeping this? Yeah, the ground's going to be more difficult to dig. Why would I wait till winter to prepare for winter? That's something a grasshopper would do. And I read that story as a small child. I don't know what a hear source is. I guess it's hard to get motivated for stupid people. Bandeja paisa. I have never had. Why do I need a heat source? Why are you guys asking me questions about my living situation that have absolutely nothing to do with the book I'm about to be reading. Why are you condescending to my survival skills? Why would you think I procrastinate, Bandeja? You're literally watching me work, you fucking retard. Why are you asking me questions? Why are any of you asking me questions? Why are we making small talk? I don't need... Like, if you were concerned with what I needed, Tony, I needed new headphones today, but I dealt with that myself because I'm resourceful and ingenious. I needed shoes last week, but I dealt with that myself because I'm resourceful and ingenious. I don't know why the fuck you guys are asking me questions. I don't know why you're offering to give me shit that I'm not asking for. I don't know what this is, but it pisses me off every time it happens. What about Trump, Mike? The fuck does that question have to do with me? That's better. Done with that dumb shit forever. None of that has anything whatsoever to do with the show. None of you needs to be speaking to me. Not any of you. I am not a jerk off pretending to be your friend on the internet. Keep it moving. We're not peers. Just keep it moving. Hey, Beyond, what's up? I can't say BTV. I'll never be able to say that. So I got to give you a better nickname than Beyond. Night is going fine. All right, we've got like 4 more chapters left. This piece of shit. We got 6 more chapters left. I'm not going to be able to get this done tonight. I'm not going to be able to finish this tonight. 6 chapters is too many to digest in one sitting. Hey, CMD, I'm not relaxing. I don't even look relaxed. I'm extremely tense. I only smoke cigarettes when I'm stressed. Chapter 4 of Edward Bulwer Lytton's The Coming Race. On alighting from the airboat, a child accosted R. Flynn in the hall with a request that he would be present at the funeral obsequies of a relation who had recently departed from that nether world. Now, I had never seen a burial place or cemetery amongst this people, and glad to seize even so melancholy an occasion to defer an encounter with Z, I asked R. Flynn if I might be permitted to witness with him the intermittent of his relation, unless, indeed, it were regarded as one of those sacred ceremonies to which a stranger to their race might not be admitted. The departure of an Arn to a happier world, answered my host, when, as in the case of my kinsman, he has lived so long in this as to have lost pleasure in it, is rather a cheerful, though quiet festival than a sacred ceremony, and you may accompany me if you will. Preceded by the child messenger, we walked up the main street to a house at some little distance, and, entering the hall, were conducted to a room on the ground floor, where we found several persons assembled around a couch on which was laid the deceased. It was an old man who had, as I was told, lived beyond his 130th year. To judge by the calm smile on his countenance, he had passed away without suffering. One of the sons, who was now the head of the family and who seemed in vigorous middle life, though he was considerably more than 70, stepped forward with a cheerful face and told R. Flynn that the day before he died his father had seen in a dream his departed Guy, and was eager to be reunited with her, and restored to youth beneath the nearer smile of the all-good. While these two were talking, my attention was drawn to a dark metallic substance at the further end of the room. It was about 20 feet in length, narrow in proportion, and all closed round, save, near the roof, there were small round holes through which might be seen a red light. From the interior emanated a rich and sweet perfume, and while I was conjecturing what purpose this machine was to serve, all the timepieces in the town struck the hour with their solemn musical chime. And as that sound ceased, music of a more joyous character, but still of a joy subdued and tranquil, rang throughout the chamber, and from the walls beyond in a choral peal. Symphonious with the melody, those in the room lifted their voices in chant. The words of this hymn were simple. They expressed no regret, no farewell, but rather a greeting to the new world, whither the deceased had preceded the living. Indeed, in their language, the funeral hymn is called the birth song. Then the corpse, covered by a long cerement, was tenderly lifted up by 6 of the nearest kinfolk and borne towards the dark thing I have described. I pressed forward to see what happened. A sliding door or panel at one end was lifted up, the body deposited within, on a shelf, the door reclosed. A spring at the side touched, a sudden sighing sound heard from within, and lo, at the other end of the machine, the lid fell down, and a small handful of smoldering dust dropped into a patera placed to receive it. The son took up the patera and said, in what I understood afterward was the usual form of words, "Behold, how great is the Maker! To this little dust he gave form and life and soul. It needs not this little dust for him to renew form and life and soul to the beloved one we shall soon see again." Each present bowed his head and pressed his hand to his heart. Then a young female child opened a small door within the wall, and I perceived in the recess shelves on which were placed many paterae, like that which the son held, save that they all had covers. With such a cover, a guy now approached the son and placed it over the cup, on which it closed with a spring. On the lid were engraved the name of the deceased and the words, "Lent to us," here the date of birth; "Recalled from us," here the date of death. The closed door shut with a musical sound, and all was over. In chapter 24. You have a few seconds for discussion on what we just read, and then we'll begin 25, which is a very long chapter. I don't know why he put a chapter break there. Chapter 25. And this, said I, with my mind full of what I had witnessed, this, I presume, is your usual form of burial? Our invariable form, answered Arflin. What is it among your people? We inter the body whole within the earth. What? To degrade the form you have loved and honored, the wife on whose breast you have slept, to the loathsomeness of corruption? But if the soul lives again, can it matter whether the body wastes within the earth or is reduced by that awful mechanism, worked no doubt by the agency of vril, into a pinch of dust? You answer well, said my host, and there is no arguing on a matter of feeling. But to me your custom is horrible and repulsive, and would serve to invest death with gloomy and hideous associations. It is something, too, to my mind, to be able to preserve the token of what has been our kinsman or friend within the abode in which we live. We thus feel more sensibly that he still lives, though not visibly so to us. But our sentiments in this, as in all things, are created by custom. Custom is not to be changed by a wise on, any more than it is changed by a wise community, without the greatest deliberation followed by the most earnest conviction. It is only thus that change ceases to be changeability, and once made is made for good. When we regained the house, Arflin summoned some of the children in his service and sent them round to several of his friends, requesting their attendance that day, during the easy hours, to a festival in honor of his kinsman recall to the all-good. This was the largest and gayest assembly I have ever witnessed during this It's the largest and gayest assembly I ever witnessed during my stay among the Arna, and was prolonged far into the silent hours. The banquet was spread in a vast chamber reserved especially for grand occasions. This differed from our entertainments, and was not without a certain resemblance to those we read of in the luxurious gap of the Roman Empire. There was not one great table set out, but numerous small tables, each appropriated to 8 guests. It is considered that beyond that number conversation languishes and friendship cools. The Arna never laugh loud, as I have before observed, but the cheerful ring of their voices at the various tables betoken gaiety of intercourse. As they have no stimulant drinks and are temperate in food, though so choice and dainty, the banquet itself did not last long. The tables sank through the floor, and then came musical entertainments for those who liked them. Many, however, wandered away. Some of the younger ascended in their wings, for the hall was roofless, forming aerial dances. Others strolled through the various apartments, examining the curiosities with which they were stored, or formed themselves into groups for various games, the favorite of which is a complicated kind of chess played by 8 persons. I mixed with the crowd, but was prevented joining in the conversation by the constant companionship of one or other of my host's sons, appointed to keep me from obtrusive questionings. The guests, however, noticed me but slightly. They had grown accustomed to my appearance, seeing me so often in the streets, and I had ceased to excite much curiosity. To my great delight, Z avoided me, and evidently sought to excite my jealousy by marked attentions to a very handsome young Arn, who, though, as is the modest custom of the males when addressed by females, he answered with downcast eyes and blushing cheeks, and was demure and shy as young ladies new to the world are, in most civilized countries, except England and America, was evidently much charmed by the tall guy, and ready to falter a bashful yes, if she had actually proposed, fervently hoping that she would, and more averse to the idea of reduction to a cinder after I had seen the rapidity with which a human body can be hurried into a pinch of dust. I amused myself by watching the manners of the other young people. I had the satisfaction of observing that Z was no singular asserter of a female host's valued rights. Wherever I turned my eyes or lent my ears, it seemed to me that the guy was the wooing party, and the Arn the coy and reluctant one. The pretty, innocent airs which an Arn gave himself on being thus courted, the dexterity with which he evaded direct answers to professions of attachment, or turned into jest the flattering compliments addressed to him, would have done honor to the most accomplished coquette. Both my male chaperons were subjected greatly to these seductive influences, and both acquitted themselves with wonderful honor to their tact and self-control. I said to the elder son, who preferred mechanical employments to the management of a great property, and who was of an eminently philosophical temperament, I find it difficult to conceive how, at your age, and with all the intoxicating effects on the senses of music and light and perfumes, you can be so cold to that impassioned young guy who has just left you with tears in her eyes at your cruelty. The young Arn replied with a sigh, Gentle Tish, the greatest misfortune in life is to carry one guy if you are in love with another. Marry one guy if you are in love with another. Oh, you're in love with another? Alas, yes. And does she not return your love? I don't know. Sometimes a look, a tone, makes me hope so, but she has never plainly told me that she loves me. Have you not whispered in her own ear that you love her? Fie! What are you thinking of? What world do you come from? Could I so betray the dignity of my sex? Could I be so unarnly, so lost to shame, as to own love to a guy who has not first owned hers to me? Pardon, I was not quite sure that you pushed the modesty of your sex so far. But does no Arn ever say to a guy, I love you, till she says it to him first? I can't say that no Arn has ever done so, but if he ever does, he is disgraced in the eyes of the Arna, and secretly despised by the guy. No guy well brought up would listen to him. She would consider that he audaciously infringed on the rights of her sex while outraging the modesty which dignifies his own. It is very provoking, continued the Arn, for she whom I love has certainly courted no one else, and I cannot but think she likes me. Sometimes I suspect that she does not court me because she fears I would ask some unreasonable settlement as to the surrender of her rights. But if so, she cannot really love me. For where a guy really loves, she foregoes all rights. Is this young guy present? Oh, yes. She sits yonder, talking to my mother. I looked in the direction to which my eyes were thus guided and saw a guy dressed in robes of bright red, which among this people is a sign that a guy as yet prefers a single state. She wears a neutral tint to indicate that she is looking about for a spouse. Dark purple if she wishes to intimate that she has made a choice. Purple and orange when she is betrothed or married. Light blue when she is divorced or a widow and would marry again. Light blue is of course seldom seen among a people where all are of so high a type of beauty. It is difficult to single out one as peculiarly handsome. My young friend's choice seemed to me to possess the average of good looks, but there was an expression in her face that pleased me more than did the faces of the young guy generally, because it looked less bold, less conscious of female rights. I observed that, while she talked to Brar, she glanced from time to time sidelong at my young friend. Courage, said I. That young guy loves you. Aye, but if she shall not say so, how am I the better for her love? Your mother is aware of your attachment? Perhaps so. I never owned it to her. It would be unarnly to confide such weakness to a mother. I have told my father. He may have told it again to his wife. Will you permit me to quit you for a moment and glide behind your mother and your beloved? I am sure they are talking about you. Do not hesitate. I promise that I will not allow myself to be questioned till I rejoin you. The young Arn pressed his hand on his heart, touched me lightly on the head, and allowed me to quit his side. I stole unobserved behind his mother and his beloved. I overheard their talk. Brar was speaking. Said she, There can be no doubt of this. Either my son, who is of marriageable age, will be decoying into marriage with one of his many suitors, or he will join those who emigrate to a distance, and we shall see him no more. If you really care for him, my dear Lo, you should propose. I do care for him, Brar, but I doubt if I really could ever win his affections. He is fond of his inventions and timepieces, and I am not like Z, but so dull that I fear I could not enter into his favorite pursuits, and then he would get tired of me, and at the end of 3 years divorce me, and I could never marry another. Never. It is not necessary to know about timepieces, to be so necessary to the happiness of an Arn. Know how to be so necessary to the happiness of an Arn. Who cares for timepieces? That he would rather give up the timepieces than divorce his guy. You see, my dear Lo, continued Brar, that precisely because we are the stronger sex, we rule the other, provided we never show our strength. If you were superior to my son in making timepieces and automata, you should, as his wife, always let him suppose you thought him superior in that art to yourself. The Arn tacitly allows the preeminence of the guy in all except his own special pursuit, but if she either excels him in that or affects not to admire him for his proficiency in it, he will not love her very long. Perhaps he may even divorce her, But where a guy really loves, she soon learns to love all that the Arn does. The young guy made no answer to this address. She looked down musingly, then a smile crept over her lips, and she rose, still silent, and went through the crowd till she paused by the young Arn who loved her. I followed her steps, but discreetly stood at a little distance while I watched them. Somewhat to my surprise, till I recollected the coy tactics among the Arna, the lover seemed to receive her advances with an air of indifference. He even moved away, but she pursued his steps, and a little time after, both spread their wings and vanished amid the luminous space above. Just then I was accosted by the chief magistrate, who mingled with the crowd, distinguished by no signs of deference or homage. It so happened that I had not seen this great dignitary since the day I had entered his dominions, and recalling Arflin's words as to his terrible doubt whether or not I should be dissected, a shudder crept over me at the sight of his tranquil countenance. "I hear much of you, stranger, from my son Tari," said the Tur, laying his hand politely on my bended head. "He is very fond of your society, and I trust you are not displeased with the customs of our people." I muttered some unintelligible answer, which I intended to be an assurance of my gratitude for the kindness I had received from the Tur, and my admiration of his countrymen, but the dissecting knife gleamed before my mind's eye and choked my utterance. A softer voice said, "My brother's friend must be dear to me." And looking up, "My brother's friend must be dear to me." And looking up, I saw a young guy, who might be 16 years old, standing beside the magistrate and gazing at me with a very benignant countenance. She had not come to her full growth and was scarcely taller than myself, viz. About 10 inches, and thanks to that comparatively diminutive stature, I thought her the loveliest guy I had hitherto seen. I suppose something in my eyes revealed that impression, for her countenance grew yet more benignant. "Tari tells me," she said, "that you have not yet learned to accustom yourself to wings. That grieves me, for I should have liked to fly with you." "Alas," I replied, "I can never hope to enjoy that happiness. I am assured by Z that the safe use of wings is a hereditary gift, and it would take generations before one of my race could poise himself in the air like a bird." "Let not that thought vex you too much," replied this amiable princess, "for after all, there must come a day when Z and myself must resign our wings forever. Perhaps when that day comes, we might be glad if the Arn we choose was also without wings." The Tur had left us, and was lost among the crowd. I began to feel at ease with Tari's charming sister, and rather startled her by the boldness of my compliment in replying that no Arn she could choose would ever use his wings to fly away from her. It is so against custom for an Arn to say such civil things to a guy, till she has declared her passion for him, and been accepted as his betrothed, that the young maiden stood quite dumbfounded for a few moments. Nevertheless, she did not seem displeased. At last, recovering herself, she invited me to accompany her into one of the less crowded rooms and listen to the songs of the birds. I followed her steps as she glided before me, and she led me into a chamber almost deserted. A fountain of naphtha was playing in the center of the room. Round it were ranged soft divans, and the walls of the room were open on one side to an aviary in which the birds were chanting their artful chorus. The guy seated herself on one of the divans, and I placed myself at her side. "Tari tells me," she said, "that Arflen has made it the law of this house that you are not to be questioned as to the country you come from, or the reason why you visit us. Is it so?" "It is." "May I, at least, without sinning against that law, ask at least if the guy eye in your country of the same pale color as yourself, and no taller?" "I do not think, O beautiful guy, that I infringe the law of Arflen, which is more binding on myself than anyone, if I answer questions so innocent. The guy eye in my country are much fairer of hue than I, and the average height is at least a head shorter than mine." "They cannot be so strong as the Arna amongst you, but I suppose their superior vril force makes up for such extraordinary disadvantages of size?" "They do not profess the vril force as you know it, but still they are very powerful in my country, and an Arn has small chance of a happy life if he be not more or less governed by his guy." "You speak feelingly," said Tari's sister, in a tone of voice half sad, half petulant. "You are married, of course?" "No, certainly not." "Nor betrothed?" "Nor betrothed." "Is it possible that no guy has proposed to you?" "In my country, the guy does not propose. The Arn speaks first." "What a strange reversal of the laws of nature," said the maiden, "and what want of modesty in your sex. But have you never proposed, never loved one guy more than another?" I felt embarrassed by these ingenious questionings and said, "Pardon me, but I think we are beginning to infringe upon Arflin's injunction. This much only will I answer, and then I implore you ask no more. I did once feel the preference you speak of. I did propose, and the guy would willingly have accepted me, but her parents refused their consent." "Parents? Do you mean seriously to tell me that parents can interfere with the choice of their daughters?" "Indeed they can, and do very often." "I should not like to live in that country," said the guy simply, "but I hope you will never go back to it." I bowed my head in silence. The guy gently raised my face with her right hand and looked into it tenderly. "Stay with us," she said. "Stay with us and be loved." Or I guess that's "Stay with us," she said. "Stay with us and be loved." But I might have answered, what dangers of becoming a sender I might have encountered I still trouble to think, when the light of the naphtha fountain is obscured by the shadow of wings, and Z, flying through the open roof, alighted between us. It's cringy that this dude in his 30s is writing a love story about, well, this character in his 30s is telling us that he was openly pining after a 16-year-old girl. She said not a word, but taking my arm with her mighty hand, she drew me away, as a mother draws a naughty child, and led me through the apartments to one of the corridors on which, by the mechanism, they generally prefer to stairs. Z and I ascended to my own room. This gained, she breathed on my forehead, touched my breast with her staff, and I was instantly plunged into a profound sleep. When I awoke some hours later, this should have been where the chapter break is. I don't know why there was a chapter between. I don't know why there was a chapter between the party subsequent to the what's that called when you have a cremation. I don't know why the funeral, the party subsequent to the funeral had a chapter break. He's knocked unconscious subsequent to the funeral party. I don't know why this isn't a chapter break. When I awoke some hours later and heard the songs of the birds in the adjoining aviary, the remembrance of Tari's sister, her gentle looks and caressing words, vividly returned to me. And so impossible is it for one born and reared in our upper world state of society to divest himself of ideas dictated by vanity and ambition, that I found myself instinctively building proud castles in the air. "Tish though I be," thus ran my meditations, "Tish though I be, it is then clear that Z is not the only guy whom my appearance can captivate. Evidently I am loved by a princess, the first maiden of this land, the daughter of the absolute monarch whose autocracy they so idly seek to disguise by the republican title of chief magistrate. But for the sudden swoop of that horrible Z, this royal lady would have formally proposed to me, and though it may be very well for R. Flynn, who is only a subordinate minister, a mere commissioner of light, to threaten me with destruction if I accept his daughter's hand, yet a sovereign, whose word is law, could compel the community to abrogate any custom that forbids intermarriage with one of a strange race, and which in itself is a contradiction to their boasted equality of ranks. It is not to be supposed that this daughter, who spoke with such incredulous scorn of the interference of parents, would not have sufficient influence with her royal father to save me from the combustion to which Arflin would condemn my form. And if I were exalted by such an alliance, who knows but what monarch might elect me as his successor? Why not? Few among this indolent race of philosophers like the burden of such greatness. All might be pleased to see the supreme power lodged in the hands of an accomplished stranger, who has experience of other and livelier forms of existence, and once chosen, what reforms I would institute, what additions to the really pleasant but too monotonous life of this realm and familiarity with the civilized nations above ground I would effect. I am fond of the sports of the field. Next to war, is not the chase a king's pastime? In what varieties of strange game does this netherworld abound? How interesting to strike down creatures that were known above ground before the deluge. But how? By what terrible vril, in which form, and in which, from want of hereditary transmission, I could never be a proficient. No, but a civilized handy breech-loader, which these ingenious mechanicians could not only make, but could no doubt improve. Nay, surely I saw one in the museum. Indeed, an absolute king, I should discountenance vril altogether, except in cases of war. Apropos of war, it is perfectly absurd to stint a people so intelligent, so rich, so well armed, to a petty limit of territory sufficing 10 or 12,000 families. Is not this restriction a mere philosophical crochet, at variance with the aspiring element in human nature, such has been partially and with complete failure tried in the upper world by the late Mr. Robert Owen. Of course, one would not go to war with the neighboring nations as well armed as one's own subjects. But then, what of those regions inhabited by races unacquainted with virile, and apparently resembling, in their democratic institutions, my American countrymen? One might invade them without offense to the virile nations, our allies, appropriate their territories, extending perhaps to the most distant regions of the nether earth, and thus rule over an empire in which the sun never sets. I forgot in my enthusiasm that over those regions there was no sun to set. As for the fantastical notion against conceding fame or renown to an eminent individual, because, forsooth, bestowal of honors ensures contest, and the pursuit of them stimulates angry passions and mars the felicity of peace, it is opposed to the very elements, not only of the human, but of the brute creation, which are all, if tameable, participators in the sentiment of praise and emulation. What renown would be given to a king who thus extended his empire? I should be deemed a demigod. Thinking of that, the other fanatical notion of regulating this life by reference to one which, no doubt, we Christians firmly believe in, but never take into consideration, I resolved that enlightened philosophy compelled me to abolish a heathen religion so superstitiously at variance with modern thought and practical action. Musing over these various projects, I felt how much I should have liked at that moment to brighten my wits by a good glass of whiskey and water. Not that I am habitually a spirit drinker, but certainly there are times when a little stimulant of alcoholic nature taken with a cigar enlivens the imagination. Yes, certainly among these herbs and fruits there would be a liquid from which one could extract a pleasant vinous alcohol, and with a steak cut off for one of those elks. What offense to science to reject the animal food which our first medical men agree in recommending to the gastric juices of mankind. One would certainly pass a more exhilarating hour of repast. Then, too, instead of those antiquated dramas performed by childish amateurs, certainly, when I am king, I will introduce our modern opera and a corps de ballet, for which one might find, among the nations I shall conquer, young females of less formidable height and those, and thews than the Gaii, not armed with vril, and not insisting upon one's marrying them. Cringe. I was so completely wrapped in these and similar reforms, political, social, and moral, calculated to bestow on the people of the netherworld the blessings of a civilization known to the races of the upper, that I did not perceive that Z had entered the chamber till I heard a deep sigh, and, raising my eyes, beheld her standing by my couch. I need not say that, according to the manners of this people, a guy can, without indecorum, visit an Arn in his chamber, although an Arn would be considered forward and immodest to the last degree if he entered the chamber of a guy without previously obtaining her permission to do so. Fortunately, I was in the full habiliment I had worn when Z had deposited me on the couch. Nevertheless, I felt much irritated as well as shocked by her visit, and asked in a rude tone what she wanted. "Speak gently, beloved one, I entreat you," said she, "for I am very unhappy. I have not slept since we departed. A due sense of your shameful conduct to me as your father's guest might well suffice to banish sleep from your eyelids. Where was the affection you pretend to have for me? Where was even that politeness on which the Vril pride themselves when, taking advantage alike of that physical strength in which your sex in this extraordinary region excels our own, and of those detestable and unhallowed powers which the agencies of Vril invest in your eyes and finger ends, you exposed me to humiliation before the assembled visitors, before her royal highness, the daughter of your own chief magistrate, carrying me off to bed like a naughty infant and plunging me into sleep without asking my consent. Ungrateful! Do you reproach me for the evidences of my love? Can you think that, even if unstung by the jealousy which attends upon love till it fades away in blissful trust, when we know that the heart we have wooed is one, I could be indifferent to the perils to which the audacious overtures of that silly little child might expose you? Hold! Since you introduce the subject of perils, it perhaps does not misbecome me to say that my most imminent perils come from you yourself, or at least come from or at least would come if I believed in your love and accepted your addresses. Your father has told me plainly that in that case I should be consumed into a cinder with as little compunction as if I were the reptile whom Tari blasted into ashes with the flash of his wand. Do not let that fear chill your heart to me, exclaimed Z, dropping on her knees and absorbing my right hand in the space of her ample palm. It is true indeed that we two cannot wed, as those of the same race wed. True that the love between us must be pure as that which, in our belief, exists between lovers who reunite in the new life beyond that boundary at which the old life ends. But is not happiness enough to be together, wedded in mind and in heart? Listen, I have just left my father. He consents to our union on those terms. I have sufficient influence with the College of Sages to ensure their request to the Tur not to interfere with the free choice of a guy, provided that her wedding with one of another race be but the wedding of souls. Oh, think you that true love needs ignoble union? It is not that I yearn only to be by your side in this life, to be part and parcel of your joys and sorrows here. I ask here for a tie which will bind us forever and forever in the world of immortals. Do you reject me?" As she spoke, she knelt, and the whole character of her face was changed. Nothing of sternness left to its grandeur. A divine light, as that of an immortal, shining out from its human body. But she rather awed me as an angel that moved me as a woman, and after an embarrassed pause, I faltered forth evasive expressions of gratitude and sought, as delicately as I could, to point out how humiliating would be my position amongst her race in the light of a husband who might never be permitted the name of father. "But," said Z, "this community does not constitute the whole world." "No, nor do all the populations comprised in the League of the VIII. For that sake, for thy sake, I will renounce my country and my people. We will fly together to some region where thou shalt be safe. I am strong enough to bear thee on my wings across the deserts that intervene. I am skilled enough to cleave open amidst the rocks, valleys, in which to build our home. Solitude in a hut with thee would be to my society in the universe. Or wouldst thou return to thine own world, above the surface of this, exposed to the uncertain seasons, and lit by the changeful orbs which constitute by thy description the fickle character of those savage regions? I so speak the word, and I will force the way for thy return, so that I am thy companion there, though there is here, but partner of thy soul, and fellow traveler with thee to the world in which there is no parting and no death." I could not but be deeply affected by the tenderness at once so pure and so impassioned with which these words were uttered, and in a voice that would have rendered musical the roughest sounds and the rudest tongue. And for a moment it did occur to me that I might avail myself of Z's agency to effect a safe and speedy return to the upper world. But a very brief space for reflection sufficed to show me how dishonorable and base a return for such devotion it would be to allure thus away from her own people and a home in which I had been so hospitably treated, a creature to whom our world would be so abhorrent, and for whose barren, if spiritual love, I could not reconcile myself to renounce the more human affection of mates less exalted above my erring self. With this sentiment of duty towards the guy combined another of duty towards the whole race I belonged to. Could I venture to introduce into the whole world a being so formidably gifted, a being that, with a movement of her staff, could in less than an hour reduce New York and its glorious Kumposh into a pinch of snuff? Rob her of her staff? With her science she could easily construct another, and with the deadly lightnings that armed the slender engine her whole frame was charged. If thus dangerous to the cities and populations of the whole upper earth, could she be a safe companion to myself in case her affection should be subjected to change or embittered by jealousy? These thoughts, which it takes so many words to express, passed rapidly through my brain and decided my answer. "Z," I said, in the softest tones I could command, and pressing respectful lips on the hand into whose clasp mine vanished. "Z, I can find no words to say how deeply I am touched, and how highly I am honored, by a love so disinterested and self-immolating. My best return to it is perfect frankness. Each nation has its customs. The customs of yours do not allow you to wed me. The customs of mine are equally opposed to such a union between those of races so widely differing. On the other hand, though not deficient in courage among my own people or amid dangers with which I am familiar, I cannot, without a shudder of horror, think of constructing a bridal home in the heart of some dismal chaos, with all the elements of nature, fire and water, and mephitic gases, at war with each other, and with the probability that at some moment, while you were busied in cleaving rocks and conveying vril into lamps, I should be devoured by a crek, which your operations disturbed from its hiding place. I, a mere Tish, do not deserve the love of a guy so brilliant, so learned, so potent as yourself. Yes, I do not deserve that love, for I cannot return it. Z released my hand, rose to her feet, and turned her face away to hide her emotion. Then she glided noiselessly along the room and paused at the threshold. Suddenly, impelled as by a new thought, she returned to my side and said in a whispered tone, "You told me you would speak with perfect frankness. With perfect frankness, then answer me this question. If you cannot love me, do you love another?" "Certainly I do not." "You do not love Tari's sister?" "I never saw her before last night." "That is no answer. Love is swifter than vril. You hesitate to tell me. Do you not think it is only jealousy that prompts me to caution you? If the Tutor's daughter should declare love to you, if in her ignorance she confides to her father in preference, any preference that may justify his belief that she will woo you, he will have no option but to request your immediate destruction, as he is specially charged with the duty of consulting the good of the community, which could not allow the daughter of the Vrilya to wed a son of the Tisha, in that sense of marriage which does not confine itself to union of souls. Alas! There would then be for you no escape. She has no strength of wing to uphold you through the air. She has no science wherewith to make a home in the wilderness. Believe that here my friendship speaks, and that my jealousy is silent." With these words Z left me, and recalling those words, I thought no more of the succeeding to the throne of the Vrilya, or of the political, social, and moral reforms I should institute in the capacity as absolute sovereign. Well, you're a fucking stupid person for entertaining them in the first place. Bad book. Bad. Bad, bad, bad. Bad, dumb, and stupid. You may have already noticed that even before I read this idiot book, Rob is the exact opposite kind of person. People are defined, they're understood by what they do, especially characters in books. Because all you get of a character in a book is what the author says about them, and that's why authors are encouraged at all times to show and not tell. Because if the author tells you but the character doesn't do it, you have a narrative in conflict with itself. This narrative, I'm not saying, is in conflict with itself. It is in conflict with itself all the time. But this guy is delusional. The main character is totally delusional, even in the things that he does and the way that he behaves. He's annoying. And it's a bad book. We got 4 more chapters. Oh, 3 or 4 more chapters to get through. 6 is too many. I have other shit to do. I just have other shit to do tonight. Well, I'd sit and read that garbage book for any longer than I already have. So, I'm guessing that we're not going to get any conversation tonight. So have a good night.